Hey guys, how you doing? It's been a while since I made a video. So some of you even thought that maybe I got worse or something. No, don't worry. I'm doing better than ever. I'm continuing to improve step by step. And today I want to reflect on my recovery so far and how I see it going forward. Um, how I've rethought a few things, just made some adjustments, but basically, just continuing in the same general direction. So let me just tell you where I'm at in terms of function. Um, I'm lifting weights. I am approaching the strength level that I had at my peak. Maybe I'll even exceed those. I don't know. I'm older now, so maybe not. We'll see. That's not really that important. In terms of endurance training, I'm increasing that 3 times a week. About I'll run or I'll bike, not very long distances yet, not very long, duration training, but that's increasing as well. So I'm getting stronger and I'm increasing my endurance. In terms of mental work, I'm programming. I'm a software engineer. I'm basically programming the way I would at a full-time job, even though I'm not employed at a full-time job. I'm working on my own project, but I'm doing the amount of work that uh, a high performing programmer would do. So in terms of function, I'm doing quite well. In terms of symptoms, I still have symptoms. I'm pretty clear on why I have symptoms, because I'm still stressed. I haven't taken care of all of my anxiety, and it's pretty clear to me the way forward. So that brings me to the next thing, which is what I've been focusing on lately is just the anxiety aspect itself. So I've just rethought about like how it is that I came to feel this way, and to get into this terrible rut that I've been climbing out of for a while now, successfully. And yeah, like it's a very complex picture, right? We're dealing with a human person, with the mind, with the brain, and with the body, and the interaction between all those two. So we always make models for how do we understand this, and the kind of models that I like that are the ones that are useful, that are pragmatic, that we can from this model, what can I now do practically to make a change, to get better, to feel better, you know. And so, for example, Dr. Sarno will always have a special place in my heart because he kind of got me started on this journey. But the concept, and I've discussed this in a previous video, of repressed emotions always felt a little bit off to me, a little bit bizarre, like the brain is trying to distract you. The concept of threatening emotions made a bit more sense to me, like if showing emotion, experiencing emotion in your environment, say in childhood, was discouraged, or maybe you were said to be weak, or in any way, or it was just sort of you were ignored, or whatever it was, whatever, if it wasn't rewarded, if you didn't feel like you could experience distress and negative emotions, then just when an emotion comes up, you will tend to get anxious. And many people have commented, and this is just sort of a general idea that's in the air for the past decade or two or whatever, is that the thing that kind of ties it all together is, of course, the stress response system, the threat response system, right? The famous fight or flight or freeze response. And in psychological terms, in sort of day-to-day terms, it translates to this one word for me: anxiety. And anxiety is a kind of a broad concept, but it begins for people it takes many forms, but it begins for people like us, especially people with a lot of physical symptoms like fatigue and pain. Uh, there can be many initiators of this process, right? Such as accidents, car accidents, emotional trauma, going all the way back to early childhood, and it could be something recent that you experienced as an adult. It can form in many different ways. Physical illness, like sometimes these kinds of things are triggered by an infection, like a flu or something. Maybe it's like the straw that broke the camel's back. Like after you were already stressed, you already had like this sort of build up going on, and then this came on, and it just triggered you. It put you over the edge into this territory. So that's how it gets initiated, and then if we're prone to seeking solutions, and sort of when we encounter the medical system, when we seek solutions to our symptoms, to our very real pain, to our very real fatigue, dizziness, brain fog, and all the myriad of symptoms that we all experience, then we start getting told that, well, everything is fine, that we can't find anything wrong with you, or people are dismissive, or they even say, oh, you're probably making it up, that just increases the anxiety, and it perpetuates things, and all the while, the stress response system is getting triggered, right? And all those effects are getting produced, right? All the muscle tension, the just all the physiological shifts, and this becomes a chronic process, right? If our threat detection system is getting triggered all the time, we're always living in this cascade, of hormones, stress hormones getting released in our body, and this cascade of physiological changes. And then when you're always in the stress, you become very sensitized to the slightest thing can set you off. It becomes easier to be stressed as you are stressed. And so what we might do, what I've done personally, is I've sort of started at this place where recognizing that, this is when you have a certain conception of where your symptoms come from, that it's not some undetected medical illness because you've been to the doctor and you've been examined, and okay, in the past you might have felt like, well, they said there's nothing wrong, but I have these symptoms, and that made you anxious. Now that you know that there's an explanation for the symptoms, and they're not dangerous, okay, that is a reduction in anxiety, and then you start moving forward bit by bit in terms of increasing activity, and that will trigger anxiety because it gets conditioned right into you that I shouldn't be doing these activities because they're dangerous, and that becomes an automatic response. The fear response is triggered every time you engage in activity, so you have to decondition that, and that takes a while, and you got to do, and each time I still do more. I like if I'm at a level that I'm sort of comfortable in, yeah, I can do it without really much increase in anxiety. But if I do something more above and beyond my current level, then I have to go through that process again of, oh my God, look how much I've done. And I feel the response in the body, and then I just remind myself that, I know exactly what's going on, and this is not dangerous. I'm just reacting, I'm having this reaction that I've experienced many times before as I've gone through the deconditioning process. And so I've done that, and then there are other aspects, right? And there are many different causes for anxiety, and this is the part where you really gotta get to know yourself and reflect and just take the time. Don't rush this process, but just pay attention to how are you responding to things. What kind of thoughts are happening in your mind, how just reflect on the processes going on in your mind and body, rather than happening automatically. Sort of observe yourself as a scientist, with a notebook, and take notes sometimes, like, I noticed when, my husband or my wife or my mother or whatever says this kind of thing or that kind of thing, I immediately, my mind goes to this, and I start to feel this, And there are all these different scenarios that are unique to each of us, but also that, of course, we will recognize when another person tells us about their particular scenario, that we experience something like that. That's an important aspect of recovery, is just taking the time to understand yourself and what is your stuff, how do you get triggered? When do you enter that particularly tense, stressful place? So yeah, you got to reflect on your own particular ways. Like for me, it's perfectionism. When I'm working on stuff, I feel like I have to achieve. It's never enough. More. I'm very driven that way, pathologically. Not in a good way. Like driven is kind of a compliment sometimes. Like, oh, you're so driven. but it has a dark side, you know. When it's too much, it's like you get these kinds of issues. And also when you've been in this stressed fight or flight state, like in my case, I noticed I'm like in the state 24/7, you know, at some level, you know. And then there are peaks like where yes, it increases, but even at like my most relaxed, there's still like a bit, you know. And what I've been focusing on a lot lately, the past few months, is two things. I've mentioned them before in my videos, and it is just providing my body with the physical feedback. So we have two things that are in conscious control: is our breath and muscle tension. We can slow down and deepen our breathing consciously. Of course, it's an unconscious process, primarily breathing, but we can, for a while, take conscious control of it and provide that physical feedback into the system. And relaxing our muscles, we can do that too. So I've noticed that I'm walking around, and I've been doing this all through the recovery, but I've been emphasizing this aspect of it the past few months. When I find myself tense, which is often, pretty much all the time, but when it sort of enters my mind, oh, I'm tense, relax. Just relax the musculature. And that sends a signal, hey, it's all right, we're safe. This physiology is not necessary, you know, shift. And breathing. I notice I will either hold my breath or I will have just shallow breathing and quick breathing, you know. And I change that to deeper breathing, you know. And like there are all these techniques of exactly how many seconds to breathe in, exactly I don't know that I know exactly like the right way to do it, but just breathe deeper, you know, and more slowly, and more rhythmically, you know. And so I'm doing this throughout the day. Each time that I notice the fact that I'm stressed, that I'm tense, that I'm anxious, sometimes for seemingly no particular reason, just because I'm in this state, you know, just because the hormones are coursing through the body and just because my brain is used to triggering and being in this state, I provide that feedback. Relax the muscles, relax the tension. And this can take from a second to 10 seconds to a few seconds, and I'm sprinkling it all throughout the day just to calm the system down. And the third thing is I stop the rushing, you know. I don't engage the urgency, because this physiological state makes you feel like I gotta run to do this next thing and run to do that next thing, and I just slow it down a bit. And in fact, these things, when I slow down, it feels like I'm going abnormally slow. It just feels too slow, like this is not normal. But I've observed how people who are not so anxious behave. Like I had to actually look and just get a gauge of how quickly do they move, and indeed they move how I move when I'm trying to move normal. You know, even though it feels too slow, is my point. That's actually normal. So that's okay. You know, if it feels too slow, it's probably normal. You know, like you're not doing things in slow motion. You're just doing things normal, but it feels too slow. So maybe that's a bit of a ramble, but I just wanted to get out everything that's been on my mind. The way forward for me, I think I will continue to improve. I will continue to get fitter physically. Like at this point, I feel like I'm physically better than much of the population of the world. I mean, in terms of how much exercise I do and how much stuff. So in functional terms, I feel I'm doing quite well. In terms of symptoms, because my stress response is still getting engaged, still getting triggered, and I'm still expanding what I'm doing, you know, because maybe some activities I've already deconditioned and I can do them more freely, you know, but others I still have to go through the process of engaging in that activity, experiencing the increase in anxiety, soothing it, you know, and decondition it through this process. For example, like when driving, I'm here in Russia now, and in Russia, man, the police pull you over just for no reason sometimes, and you know they want bribes and stuff. They look for something, you know, they look for something that you did even slightly wrong, you know, whatever. So it's like every time you see them, I get this bit of anxiety. Oh, I hope he doesn't pull me over. And I got my U.S. driver's license, so I'm not driving with a local license, and that's a thing that they can, you know, try to get me for. And the law is ambiguous. And anyway, that's just an example of a situation that sort of triggers it for me. And but lately, not as much, because I said, they pulled me over. I have to pay a bribe. I'll pay a bribe, and I'll be on my way. Whatever. What's the big deal? Uh, so stuff like that. So it could be anything, any situation and this brings me back to like paying attention to your own individual triggers and stuff in your individual ways. Notice, which situations give you anxiety and how does it work, like step by step in your mind, from thoughts to feelings, to sensations in the body. So yeah, it just takes time, it's a process. I wish it happened quicker, but I'm just glad it's happening and I'm making progress. And I can see that eventually, I'll be able to calm the system down, address all or most of the underlying stuff, triggers, and just be happier and fitter and healthier and more handsome than ever. Anyway, guys, I hope all this makes sense to you. I hope you find all this useful, and I hope you can see that I'm doing quite well. And if you ever see me not making videos for a while, don't worry. It's just because I'm doing so much other stuff in real life, and I'm okay. I promise you, if I get worse or if something happens, I will post a video, and I will let you know, like, oh my God, everything I've been saying is, guys, it's not gonna work for you, But if you don't get that video from me, be sure that everything's actually fine and getting better, and I'm just getting busy with like life as I'm getting more and more into like normal life. That's just what's happening. Well, okay, that's it for this video, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.